Welcome back, everyone, to America's Mom. I'm your host, Sharona Bishop. I am, you know, every day more and more excited for the potential of, I don't know, justice happening in America. It's possible. Seems like it might be heading in that direction. Where there is a will, there appears to be a way. At least there was under the Biden administration when they wanted to weaponize law enforcement and lawfare against citizens. So maybe there will be a way for those of us who are just trying to do the right thing and who have been following the law all along. Today's show really is not a show, it's information based. We need to educate the masses. I mean, I don't think it's happening quite fast enough. I don't think it's happening broadly enough. We're going to get into some nuances today a little bit over election security and what actually happened in Mesa County, Colorado, that led to the 9-year sentence of Clerk Tina Peters, the Mesa County clerk who did, in fact, make forensic images lawfully, legally. It was not against the law. She made forensic images of before and after the quote trusted build that is pushed and promoted and done by Dominion voting machines in 26 states across the country, not just Colorado. Clerk Tina Peters had a heads up on this and decided to make a before image and an after so she could compare the images to see exactly been done during the trusted build. Now, the reality is both federal law and Colorado state law says you cannot destroy any election information, period. None. Not a piece of paper that election information was written on. Certainly not election records off of these voting machines. And yet she found over 26,000 election records had been thoroughly deleted. That is a federal crime, as well as a crime in the state of Colorado, and yet happened to the purveyors of those crimes. It was Tina Peters who got in trouble. She's the one who was their pound of flesh and is now sitting in prison right now, awaiting President Trump's actions and those of the U.S. attorney and her own attorneys to get her out. I've asked Jeff O'Donnell, who's been, with us nearly from the beginning of these reports. He is the issuer of report number 4. He helped and assisted on reports 2 and 3. And I've asked him to come on today to really thoroughly explain report number 4. This is one of the most devastating reports to the electronic voting machine companies and to all of those who have stood by and supported these electronic voting machine companies, including Republicans, including RNC members, including governors, including attorney generals, secretaries of state. People have emphatically decided they were going to continue to lean these, even though these same companies have perpetuated unbelievable, unprecedented lawfare against anyone in this country who has any kind of voice, who is just asking the question, what's going on with these machines? What's happening here? Why do the outcomes of elections seem to be less and less about what the people actually voted for and more for some kind of strange agenda that is completely un-American, anti-constitution, and certainly in opposition to your Supreme. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today because I think we're on the eve right now of the U.S. Attorney investigation inquiry into Tina Peters' sentencing and her trial, the behavior of Judge Barrett, Judge Matthew Barrett out of Grand Junction, and what he did during her trial. He literally said it was the words that she said that are getting her the 9-year consecutive sentence, which she has the right to say whatever she wants. But in addition to that, we have Mike Lindell, who's going to be going to trial against Eric Coomer. And essentially, these electronic voting machine companies, we've unveiled a lot of information this past 2 weeks regarding third-party players who were funding Dominion and Smartmatic voting machine companies, hyperinflating the value companies so that they could get massive payouts by individuals and, of course, the companies that they sued, like Fox, like Newsmax, and of course, settling. A lot of people eventually just had to settle because their insurance companies made them, like Sidney Powell. These electronic voting machine companies have gotten away with whatever they want. They have ancestral relationships with your elected officials. They have unnatural relationships with the secretaries of state in your states that carry these electronic voting machine companies, hindering the people from ever even being able to see inside the machines. They're not allowed to. Your elected clerk and recorder cannot open up these voting machines and see what's happening inside. They can't do an audit now in the state of Colorado and the state of California on these machines. It's against the law unless if the Secretary of State says you can. There's nothing about your elections, guys, anymore that is local. And you need to understand that. President Trump getting into office It did not fix everything. In fact, there's been so much pushback on trying to secure a single day, well, not even single day. We didn't even bring that forward. Just paper ballot, hand count elections. Things about 30 years ago, not even 30 years, 22 years ago. So we're going to get into it today with Jeff O'Donnell. He's also called the Lone Raccoon. He is an authority on the electronic voting machines, on the images that were made in Mesa County. He is an authority on this. A lot of people say, Sharona, who are we supposed to be listening to? Everybody seems to be an expert. I understand. I completely understand. It's baffled me tremendously that people who were actually there nearly from the beginning of the Mesa County reports and what happened there, they're never asked questions. It's the strangest thing to me. They go after these accounts that are given millions of people to follow, and they act like they're the authority. And a lot of times it's misinformation. The events playing out right now, well, I'm not going to mention that. I don't want to muddy the waters. We're here to talk about Mesa County report number 4 with our incredible expert, Jeff O'Donnell, who joins us now on America's Mom. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Sharona. It's an honor to speak to America's Mom on the day after Mother's Day. So,
Ah, I tell you what, it's an honor to be a mother. You know what? Greatest thing ever. And I have to say, because of that, this is really where everything originated with Mesa County, was a bunch of moms were seriously upset about what was happening. We're coming off the heels of COVID. You remember this? I mean, we're coming out of mask mandates, enforced abuse of children. Don't even get me started with those who had handicaps in the public school system and what was happening to them. Parents, mothers especially, came together and said, we're going to start taking back our school boards. We're going to start doing whatever we've got to do to make this happen. And that was the birth of Mesa County. As it pertains to elections, we had well over 100 volunteers week after week after week coming out to do canvassing efforts to ensure that our elections were clean. People who said they voted, in fact, did vote, and those who said they didn't actually have someone else vote for them. So I appreciate that, and I do want to just kind of put that out there. I mean, even as we look at Tina Peters, a lot of her mandate for in her own life to do what was right was based off of her son. you know I mean, there is a calling on mothers right now to try to figure out what in the heck is going on and get it right. And so when great men like you, Dr. Walter Duarty, all the others that participated in this, I know is another mother involved in there too, but when great people came together who had the expertise to go through the forensic images of Mesa County, and you guys devoted your talent and your skill set to this, you guys are the experts that people are needing to listen to, not these mega accounts that are pushing a lot of times false information. So, Jeff, thank you for being with us. Let's get to it today. Mesa County report number 4. Um, we know this was a significant account of what happened. Your analysis of the images, because Dan Rubenstein, the district attorney of Mesa County, tried so hard to cast doubt and say there was nothing to see here in report number 4 because it specifically was regarding the Mesa County election. So let's go from there.
well, yes, it was only recently that I was able to locate a cast vote record, which is basically a record of every ballot that was cast and what votes were on it for the 2021 April election in Grand Junction. Now, this is a huge thing because this speaks directly to why Tina felt she needed to do it. It was the alarm bell that went off that made Tina realize that she needed to uh, get these forensic images, these copies of the server, and preserve that data, because it was not long after that election that she was informed that they were going to come and install this trusted build, which would, she found out, delete every single bit of information that was currently on the election server. And finding that and looking at it, to kind of give you some history, if you want to go ahead and bring up that report, and go ahead a little bit. I'll tell you when to stop. This report's available at a website called mesamadness.com. Okay, stop there. Uh, just to kind of a background for those who don't know, Mesa County. Mesa County is a very red county. And in the report I reference some of the previous presidential races to give you that idea. Okay, next page, please. I'm trying to get down to the crux of the. Okay, so this right here, there were 4 city council races in Grand Junction that took place in that election. In all 4 of them, although technically these are nonpartisan elections, in all 4 of them, it was pretty well known. I've been heard from a lot of people. I've done a lot of investigation. Is that they knew who the conservatives were and who the liberals were
Hmm.
in Grand Junction. And when all was said and done, all 4 liberals had won these seats. And this was a quite of a surprise to a lot of people that I've spoken with out there, and in speaking with Tina about it, she was surprised.
Jeff,
And
just to insert for just a second, I helped run these campaigns. This is my home. I am sixth generation Coloradan. I absolutely know the spirit of Mesa County and Grand Junction in particular. The interesting one was the Heights Simpson race. That's the only one that I kind of could have been like, I could have understood maybe possibly. Simpson is not a well liked person, but he had been in Grand Junction for a long time, and it could have been possible that people may have been like, oh, let's give him a shot. But the problem was is that Dr. Heights was extremely popular, very beloved, ran an outstanding campaign, and it was just very evident that everything was with him. It made absolutely no sense. 2 of the other candidates were brand new to Mesa County. They may have had extended family, I don't know, but nobody that anybody really knew of. You'd had to be in the Democrat circles with them, and we have a small Democrat population there, so we wouldn't have known them. The One of those 2 wore a mask the entire time, and then the 4th person was he could have possibly pulled it off. He was a former representative, Taggart, and he could have pulled it off just by name recognition. So I was like, okay, maybe I could go with Taggart, but if you notice the numbers, they're all pretty similar. And we had an affidavit from a woman that attended their after party. Okay. She attended the party celebrating those 4 that were on the left side, or not conservatives. They were the non-conservatives, the liberals or Democrats there. She was at their party. She signed an affidavit stating that 30 minutes, so at around 6:30 p.m., they announced to the group that their slate had won, even though Tina Peters herself did not know those results till she pulled them at 7 p.m. We had that affidavit. It was not allowed to be shown in court, and that woman was not allowed to testify in court either. So just a little caveat there with Mesa County. There were hundreds of people. It wasn't just me. Like you said, Jeff, hundreds of people who came out to Clerk Peters and said, this is not possible. This did not just happen. It was not just me. And it wasn't just Tina. And Tina was only at Clerk Peters was only acting at the bequest of the people in her community, because she was like, of course, completely bewildered, as we all were, when she did pull those results at 7 p.m. So just a little backstory on the Grand Junction City Council municipal race. And for all of those out there who were in agreement or saying that Tina had somehow violated the law by even questioning that, it wasn't. Canvassing was completely legal. That was tested and tried in court with Colonel Sean Smith, and obviously we won. You can canvass. You can't stop people from knocking on doors. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but you can't stop people from knocking on doors. And they did everything they possibly could to shut this effort down. So, okay, please go ahead.
okay, yes, and for them to run the table in those numbers, if you can see, I don't know if there's a way you can zoom in on those numbers a little bit, but it was around 3,000 votes, roughly, on average, all of them. Now, what I found and reported in Mesa County Report 3 from looking at the image was that, like in the 2020 election, at some point the system had reprocessed a large number of ballots, and the evidence shows that they were not processed the same way the second time. So that was the first thing. But it didn't give us any specific numbers because they didn't leave that kind of evidence in there. Well, the cast vote record lets us see something. I think you're going to be fascinated by this. Can you go forward, please? Um, go to the next table that you're going to see. Keep going, keep going. I put a lot of background information here and things about, that are going to be interesting, that they shared passwords and that sort of thing. But now we're going to get to the interesting stuff. I apologize. Okay.
There we
So,
go. This one.
yep, that one right there. Okay.
Okay, and if we
If
can
you
zoom
could,
in on that.
if you could zoom in just a little bit on that top thing there, and this is going to fascinate you. What the cast vote record let us look at is how the voters for one of the four, and I included the marijuana amendment there too for kind of a reference point. How they vote, how somebody who voted, for instance, for McAllister, which is the top one, how many of them didn't vote for the other conservative. And what you're going to see there is, on average, 1 out of 3 of every, as reported, I'm not going to say they actually voted this way, as reported, 1 out of 3 of every person who voted for one of the conservatives voted for a liberal in the other one. This is a kind.
Make that make sense for a second.
Yeah,
So
I'll make this make sense. Okay.
Okay.
Roughly. Now I know, again, this is a nonpartisan election, so these numbers, might be a little different than this. But in general, on a Republican Democrat thing, if you're going to vote Republican, 95% of the time you vote for all the Republicans. If you're a Democrat, 95% of the time you vote for the Democrats. And frankly, if you're independent, you still tend to vote one side or the other.
Mhm.
And this shows that it basically shows an almost random pattern in how these votes came out. In other words, it's like, they vote. One first thing is, it's unusual, but it's what they do there. Even, it doesn't matter what district you were in, you voted for all 4 of the district councilmen. Okay, so
Right.
that was that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So what that means is that, can you zoom in just a little bit on that? And McAllister received 6,300 votes, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now that means that of those 6,300, of those exact 6,300, 1,896 did not vote for Greg Heitz, who was the other conservative. 1,752 did not vote for Jody Green, and 1,599 did not vote for Craig Andrews. You would have expected, again, instead of these numbers, which are being 25, 30%, I take notice when they get to 10 in an election. This is some of the highest degree. I've used the term voter schizophrenia is what this looks like.
Okay,
It's like
so
they
the
went up there and decided, I'm
person.
going to vote for the conservative here, and then the liberal, and then the conservative and the liberal. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, so that percentage, 29.8%, for example, that we see there in front of McAllister's, and it's referencing Greg Heitz there. You're
Yeah,
saying 29.8% of people who voted for McAllister did not vote for Greg Heitz.
that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear, guys. So as you're looking at those percentages there, so the same, and literally Mark McAllister, Greg Heitz, and Jody Green ran almost as a slate. Craig Andrews was actually an incumbent, which was also completely bizarre because the person he ran against was the one that stayed masked up the entire time, and nobody knew who he was. Nobody did. And for him to have such a low turnout, also, he was liked. He was an incumbent. He was conservative. People knew that about him. Not a raging conservative, by the way, by any means. So he was able to navigate the left and the right pretty well. Craig Andrews was. So that is really fascinating. Okay, and he is losing by more, even, or excuse me, more people are not voting. That voted for him are not voting for the other candidates, which would not make sense, because this also, again, this is 2021. We're after COVID. We've just come, by the way, after a major major landslide victory for conservatives in the school board races, like massive victory that pulled out the city voters even. It was so massive. So nothing's making sense in Colorado. Okay, or in Grand Junction. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and you'll see that even Measure 28, which was a marijuana legalization measure, you'll see that also there did not seem to be a correlation there either. And so my suspicion is that this data is just made up. I can't put it any other way.
Okay, how does this compare now that you've seen the cast vote record? Because I was not aware that you had not seen the 2021 municipal race cast vote record yet.
No, I hadn't until just a few months ago, and that's what came from that. But that chart that you saw there is
Okay.
only possible. You can only do something like that when you have the cast vote record.
So that is only reinforced your inclination anyway from previous information that the Mesa County 2021 municipal race was just a crackpot show.
Yep, and to speak to the the real point, I think I want people to understand is this is what gave Tina Peters deep suspicions. Not even 2020. I know she was a little surprised with how things went in the 2020 election. I don't know if she was completely, we could be called an election denier yet at that point, until what I just showed you happened. And I think she had an inherent sense, given the data that she had, and hearing from so many people in the community as well. It's remarkable, and like I said, I've never seen that degree of, again, I'll call it apparent voter schizophrenia in any other election that I've ever looked at.
Well, we do have a lot of mental health issues in Mesa County, but I completely concur. We're still going to stay within our party line structures no matter what goes on there. And I agree that was what was so baffling. I think furthermore what was so baffling was the lack of desire for anybody to really investigate. So the people had to get together, again, hundreds of people every single week for 5 months canvassing, and all the while that was happening, you had the left and the Women's League of Voters coming after citizens trying to derail this effort to verify whether or not people had just voted, not asking what they voted, just asking if they voted. And so many affidavits were collected in Grand Junction, Colorado, of people saying they had not voted, but the Secretary of State's data showed they did, or they had voted and it showed they did not. And largely it was conservative voters, we know, because they were oil and gas affidavits largely that we collected where their information did not show they had voted, even though oil and gas gives them the day off to go vote. So they knew they had. It was just, it just, it just wasn't true. It wasn't real. But let's get back to your report and
I
what you
have an
found.
answer, I think, to
Oh,
one of your deep abiding questions that
oh,
you said earlier today. If we go back to that report, you're going to see something very interesting. And if we bring that report back up, and I think you want to go up. I'm sorry, I know I said I was going to go through linearly, but I didn't. Just keep going. I know what I'm looking for. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, keep going. Keep going. There we go. Stop. Go down. Go down to that little table there. There we go.
hmm.
There wasn't just one cast vote record that I found. There were three. Now, this corresponds to things in the election management server. Let me know that reports were run that created this cast vote record, meaning reports were run that showed whoever ran them what the current results of the election was.
Oh
And look
my
at the
gosh.
date 3/31. The election was the 8th.
Okay.
They
So just
ran
for,
results
mhm.
on the 31st of March. So that's how they knew they were going to win.
So this is something we're always told they do not know. We are always told all they're doing is just getting a count of how many ballots they've has been collected. That's all they're doing is just counting how many actual ballots have been collected, not the results of the ballots. So we're told that all the results are held until the day of the of election day. So if the March 8th in this case, then that's when the actual final report, that's when the report of how the ballot was cast would finally be tabulated and the clerk would receive a printout. That's what we've been told up till now. But I just want to be clear about this for people who are watching. If they pulled the cast vote records, they would see how those ballots have already been cast. Is that correct?
Correct, and they ran other things too. If you, I encourage you to look at the report yourself, because I put in there, uh, I put the actual commands that were run at the time, and you can see that they did run somebody ran report generation on that server on the 31st, and knew what the results were. They could
Jeff,
have gotten there every single thing.
is there any indication of whether it was done in-house or?
I don't see any evidence that it wasn't done in house, but there are people out there cleverer than I am in all cases, and so I don't rule anything out as far as whether it could have been a remote thing, because we know there had to have been some remote access to that server, due to the fact that something had to program the algorithm to tell it what the numbers were supposed to be.
Is there
So
any way
it
to
is.
know? Is there any way to figure out
Well, no,
who
because
requested?
the problem was that the log files that would tell us that uh, were set to auto delete, basically overwrite every couple of days. So if you don't catch it within a day or two, there's no way that the information just isn't there. I mean, there's on the server, people
This is
reported
crazy.
there is what I would call circumstantial evidence of remote access, meaning, to me, I can't point to it and say, yes, absolutely, it happened. However, we see the kind of things we would see had that happened. If you
Had somebody
understand the,
remotely accessed it and
yeah,
done a
remotely
cast vote
access. So,
record.
but yeah, but the smoking gun for that has been removed. That in itself has been removed.
That's that
Yes,
cannibal
yep,
program that we talked about.
yep.
Yeah, where and that in and of itself is illegal, isn't it? Because every single piece of election information is supposed to be preserved. Period. Records
Highly
are supposed to be
illegal.
preserved. It's baffling to me, Jeff, and I know we've talked about this, but I haven't talked about Mesa County in a while. And it's baffling to me how nobody seems to care who is in authority over there. They are not investigating it. So Dan Rubenstein attempts to actually discredit this report that you come out with, and this is even before the cast vote records, which to me means we need to come back to this District Attorney Rubenstein, and somebody needs to explain who was breaking and entering into the system and printing out cast vote or getting the cast vote record information so they would know where the Democrats stood versus the Republicans. I hope this is making sense to everybody. That's why that information is important and valuable, and why you don't get it till after the election, because it would tell you. And this is why we have had so much beef about early voting and ballot harvesting, because we've known this is what they're doing. But you literally have the evidence from Mesa County that they had requested the cast vote records. They saw it on the 31st, and they saw it multiple times on the 8th, the day of the election. Oh, 8th, excuse me, the
Yeah,
15th
actually,
was the actual election date, excuse me.
yeah,
So they would have seen halfway through, and they
yes.
would have known how much they needed to backfill.
Actually, yes. I mean, at that point, I think the numbers in there, 40% or so, 30 to 40% of all the votes had already been counted at that point. And I looked at the results in that particular cast vote record, and based on the results it was showing, it was very clear that who was going to win and who was going to lose. There was the numbers were too big to overcome, especially given the fact that all of these. Don't forget, all of these votes that we're talking about were cast by mail. On the 31st. We hadn't had election day yet. It was just mail ballots. The 2020 election, when the reprocessing happened there, that was primarily mail ballots, maybe a few early. And I can't stress enough, we're not going to fix this problem completely until we get rid of no excuse absentee balloting. It's just too much. And if anybody's watching this from a state where they're 100% mail in, you got to find a way to change that. You will never have a fair election again. Yes, the machines need to go. It's like, people tend to laser beam on one thing. It's human. You have one particular issue that's the most important to you, and so you tend to just go to an issue, and that's fine. But you understand, this is not a single issue fraud.
Yeah.
It's the machines. It's the early balloting. It's the dirty voter rolls. It's the no ID. In places that don't require voter ID. It's this smorgasbord of evil, and they all have to be addressed, or they will find a way to steal the next one.
And really, hardly any of those issues have been addressed nationally because the Congress and the Senate don't want it. President Trump's put executive orders out there now, and those aren't being fulfilled. People are, I mean, literally, we're not supposed to have electronic voting machine equipment coming from adversarial countries, and yet all of the electronic voting machines are, the motherboards are made in China. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I'm obviously not the expert. I've listened to you guys and I've read your reports, and I was there for the unbelievable vitriol, you guys exposing what happened in that machine on election day of this municipal race in 2021, and the lawfare that has happened, the vitriol, the weaponization. You guys have been tormented, followed, your phones hacked, your stuff, your equipment hacked. I mean, the the out the outcome of all of this, of exposing these electronic voting machines, they've never had to answer for it. They just sue everybody into the ground. But there was one other issue that was happening that I just still can't wrap my mind around. And we talked about this the last time you were on, but I needed more time to just really process it. When we finally got to, and I say we, but it wasn't me, it was citizens who came together and got this done. They were finally able to look at the ballots from the Mesa County 2021 municipal race. And many of those ballots had been run through the tabulator multiple times. What kind of impact would that have had on the outcome of the election as well?
Catastrophic. I mean, if they're doing that, there's no limit to what they could do. And it's I know exactly what remember what you're talking about there, and it's another level, frankly. It's like I have learned, the bad guys have taught us how to steal an election very well, if we wanted to do it, which we don't. Um, but that is like a whole nother thing, to indicate that you had paper ballots that had been, and proof that the paper ballots themselves, not the images I know are altered in many cases, but the paper ballots themselves run through again, is it's inconceivable that that could even be allowed. If you were think about, somebody's going to notice if you do that, right, Sharona?
I would
Like,
think.
if you take a stack and run it through, that had already run through, and you run it through again, somebody next to you or somebody in office is going to notice. So how do you do that without A, having the entire office complicit, which I refuse to believe, or B, how do you sneak this information? And again, you get back to what you just said. Nobody's investigating.
Right. Nobody has.
Nobody's investigating.
Hmm.
And it probably wouldn't take very much investigation to figure out what happened. I mean, you know who was there, you know who was in that office, and you just need to ask some very pointed questions. But those questions have to come from a
An expert who knows what
yeah,
they're talking about, not Matthew Strui and Dan Rubenstein, who knew nothing and consulted with Dominion to try to get answers. It's the fox in the hen house. I just didn't understand anything about what they attempted to do there, except
yeah,
for say, we did it, we looked at it, it's over, move on. It was preposterous. And by the way, Jeff O'Donnell did an incredible rebuttal to Dan Rubenstein's clown show that day, trying to throw Sandra Brown under the bus. But it does take me to this question. So obviously, for those who are listening, if a ballot has multiple timestamps on it, that's election crime. Something happened there. We don't know if the ballot was counted two, three, four times. We don't know. We just know it was ran through the tabulator two, three, or four times, which was the case of the municipal election in Mesa County in 2021. They all eyes were, I mean, they saw it now. They've accounted for it. They know in fact those ballots were run multiple times. And then they tried to say, yeah, but it didn't affect the outcome of the numbers. But that's what you're explaining with the cast vote record. That's what we're talking about with the mail-in ballots, being able to just throw those ballots in the box out there. I thought this was hilarious, Jeff. I go in to vote in the primaries in 24 in Mesa County, where my residency is. I go in to vote, and they're making me show an ID. Like they're acting like this is just really serious. They make me show an ID. While I'm standing there, the printing machine for the ballots that was printing off the ballots decides to do an update right then. But don't worry, it's not online. It just did an update, but don't worry, Sharona, don't worry. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, then they make me show my ID. They make me prove that I live in Mesa County, all these things. While I'm standing there, I'm looking out the window and seeing cars driving up, throwing envelopes into the drop box, not having to show ID, not having to prove that they are citizens of Mesa County, not having to prove that they're American citizens at that. And of course, in Colorado, you can have up to 10 ballots at a time that you're just throwing into the drop box. It's such a show. It's such a clown show. But if you have ballots that have multiple timestamps, is that, I guess I should ask you, is that election crime?
It would certainly seem to be because I cannot. There should be no reason, uh, for it to actually have been time stamped
Hmm.
would indicate that there wasn't if there was a jam that it didn't go through. It's hard to imagine it would have gotten a timestamp. So if there are multiple timestamps, that means it was run through multiple times, and that would indicate an election crime.
And
Pure and
yet
simple.
still, yeah,
But I
no
guess
investigation.
nowadays the definition of election crime only includes numbers that would obviously change an election. Otherwise, it's not a crime.
Yes. Okay. So then that's where you have backfilled the story with the cast vote record and demonstrating that somebody was checking the count. Somebody
Yeah.
was checking. They were trying to make sure how many ballots are coming in for Republicans, how many ballots are coming in for Democrats starting on March 31st
You want
and
to hear
then
something
April
funny?
8th. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the day after the reprocessing event occurred in the 2021 election. So the reprocessing event that reprocessed all those ballots happened on the 30th, and the next day they checked the records to see if it worked.
Okay, we're gonna pause for just a moment here. I need to acknowledge our sponsor for the show today. We're gonna pause right there because these criminals should not get away with this. I don't care how much time passes by. I don't care how what is the word they say? People grow weary. They get weary of the conversation. We have a woman sitting in prison for 9 years for doing her job, for preserving both federal and state election laws and records of these elections. That was her job. It's what she's supposed to do. And yet here we are. Nobody seems to give a damn. It's unbelievable. In fact, the most bizarre part of all of this is seeing the current clerk and recorder, Bobby Gross, in an article say she does not believe Tina Peters did anything wrong. And yet there's no investigation into what's going on in this county. It is disgusting. And Dan Rubenstein has certainly done the most horrendous job. He's done a great job fronting for his handlers, but he's done a horrendous job defending and protecting elections in Mesa County. We're going to come back to that in just a moment. We are with Jeff O'Donnell, the lone raccoon, who originated a report number 4 in Mesa County, Clerk Peters County, and that really was and is, in my opinion, going to be the death blow to Dominion voting machines in the state of Colorado. This is not going to continue. We're not going to continue to see our elections be stolen in Colorado. Remember, this is the most progressive state in the union. They kill babies for commerce, cut off healthy body parts of children for commerce, and promote it all over the country. And now they're making taxpayers pay for both in Colorado. It is Satan's little season there in that state, and it needs to end. Before we come back to our second part with Jeff O'Donnell, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge our great sponsor. You know, here on America's Mom, we are all about America and making our country great again. Well, according to President Trump, Peter Navarro, the great Mike Lindell, Steve Bannon, War Room, the fastest way for us to get back on track is to support American made, American manufacturers, and American workers. And we do that for the last 2.5 years. I've been shopping with a great American producer. I want you to go to shopwithpatriots.com and go check them out today. One of the things I love is that everything that they do there is clean, it is toxin free, it's not going to poison your family. They have been decades ahead of the rest of the country. And even though it cost them more, they always did what was in the best interest of Americans. You can check out everything they have at shopwithpatriots.com today. Go over there, go fill out the little thing. My great person's going to reach out to you and they're going to help you get started. Consider this a conservative Amazon. Everything you need in, on, and around your body is available there with over 450 everyday use items. And I want to tell you guys, we have the organic whole coffee beans. They are amazing, light, medium, dark roast, breakfast blend, you name it, we have it. If that is a huge concern to you, where do you get clean organic coffee? Hello, we don't want pesticides in our morning brew. Go check it out at shopwithpatriots.com today and join our amazing club, guys. I love it. I love everything about it. Oh, by the way, beautiful, amazing perfumes and colognes that have zero endocrine disruptors. You will love it. Go check it out today. Shopwithpatriots.com. All right, so we have Tina Peters in prison for 9 years. We have report number 4 that demonstrates that we were not crazy in Mesa County, in Grand Junction, Colorado, specifically for the 2021 municipal race. And I think what has been, there's many examples of criminality in that election. I think people not understanding that what they were seeing, because we'd never been here before. Even when they were looking at those paper ballots, Jeff, you were there. I know you were at the very last minute, like people are rushing around trying to find the expert. Like I, I can't tell you how frustrated I have been at grassroots investigations. I would just say, being a grassroots person myself, people all want to that's why you're here. You are the expert. People all want to be the experts and they're not, and they don't go and find those who can do what they're trying to do. Almost in a sense, I think people are trying to make a name for themselves. They're a bit ego driven, or they just frankly they don't really believe in what they're doing. That could be possible too. They just want to check a box. In this particular case, though, it was so disappointing not to have you until the very, very end when we learned what was happening at the Lindell Offense Fund, and we cut a check for that effort to make sure that we could get our eyes and that the citizens there could get their eyes on these ballots. But the information was not construed correctly. They didn't know what they were looking at. And that was wildly frustrating. But when they saw those multiple ballots being put through, because they had single ballots being put through the tabulators over and over and over and over again, and they, had no point of reference, didn't really understand what they were seeing except to say, oh, clearly there are timestamps, multiple timestamps on these ballots over and over and over. At that point, and for those around the country who are trying to figure out what the heck is going on with their own elections, when is the point that you just stop and say, we're calling the police now? Like, so the crime has occurred here. We need to call the police now. Like, what are people supposed to do as they're seeing this type of election crime?
Well, that was been tried, especially with sheriffs. Attempting to get sheriffs involved in these election crimes has by and large been a spectacular failure, as the sheriffs themselves, elected officials, uh, for whatever the reason, did not want to get involved in this sort of thing, which is a shame, because on a county level it was entirely appropriate that they lead the investigation. But very few did. The few that did then became in the crosshairs of the bad guys and went through that whole personal destruction thing that we've all had fun with over the last
Yeah,
4 years or so.
it's been a blast. It's
Um,
been a real,
so
a real life-changing event there.
yeah, so I think that to clean up something I said incorrectly, the Grand Junction election was on the 6th. That was the 6th of April. Okay, I think I said it was the 7th. I just don't want anybody coming back and say he's lying. Anyway, it was on the 6th. So it's interesting what that means. Two things to take away from that. One is that they didn't even need to run this cast vote record until the 2 days later on the 8th, to do it. And then they ran another one on the 15th. And the reason they did that was because a few more votes were allowed to be counted for whatever reason. It was only a couple. And so they reran the cast vote record again. But the other thing is, as I said, you asked if that could have been done remotely on the 31st. Well, it's interesting. It wasn't done in the dark of night. It was done at 5 till noon
Mhm.
on
So
31st.
would somebody have known? Would there be any indicators? Would the machines, I mean, would the equipment be, would anything be happening to suggest that information was being pulled out? Because I don't know how these things work. So,
Look,
like, would anybody in that room have
hmm,
known that
I'm
someone was
guessing,
pulling it?
yeah, I'm guessing that if I can put myself back in that room on the 31st, it's a bundle of activity. You've got basically doing as many ballots, scanning as many ballots as you can, with all hands on deck and adjudication judges and all that kind of stuff. I think it probably would have been pretty easy to do something unnoticed.
So, you think that, is it fair to say that you think this was done in-house? That somebody was doing this? And why would they be doing it?
I can't, I feel bad saying it this way. I can't speak to motives. It's difficult. It's very difficult for the lawful to put themselves in the head of the lawless,
Mm,
and because you know we might, I'm sure you've played these games before. It's like, well, if
yeah.
I were to do this crime, how would I do it? This, you watch a movie or something. It's, oh, how would I do this? And it's difficult to go through the gymnastics of how you would actually do something criminal, if you're not a lawless person. If you're and so it's difficult to speak to motive. But I will say that someone in that office, or someone with remote access to that office, needed to know that the election was going to plan. That what they had done, as I said, the day before was when the day that the reprocessing happened. They knew at that point, and that, I'm pretty sure, is why they were able to come before Tina Peters even knew. They knew on the 31st.
They knew.
They knew on the 31st that the election was over.
Hmm. They knew. They knew. They knew what they needed to do to win. Hmm. Here's the thing, too, about this. Sandra Brown became obviously like the suspect, according to the state. What is your take on Sandra Brown?
Well, it's kind of interesting because before I had a chance to do any talking to anyone, and just looking at the case from the outside in, yeah, she was somebody that I identified as a person of interest, somebody who certainly had the access, and to do it. But when I actually met with them, the numerous times that I was able to meet with them to I'll use the word interrogate because that's how it started out, um, about what had happened on those days. The the answers she gave to everything, were consistent and made sense. And with I came
Hmm.
away from that at the time that I wrote report 3, and I would say I'm still there, as thinking that they were uninvolved in the fraud.
Yeah.
Tina and Sandra, and based
Hmm.
on the information that I had.
Well, the fact that Dan Rubenstein went after her and tried to make her the scapegoat, I totally saw what was happening. I know many people did, saw what he was doing. He was trying to make her the scapegoat. And I didn't understand it at the time because I'm like, you don't need to do that. Like, you already have Tina. This is so weird. Why would you do this? Why would you do this? But you want to deflect from whoever it may have been in that office. And what's interesting, you probably know this by now, emails came out literally the week of Tina's sentencing. And I don't think that we discovered that there were additional Dominion workers working with Tina advising the county commissioners, sitting in executive meetings with those county commissioners, and still working in the election room on behalf of Tina Peters. So we had Bobby Gross, who was a consultant contractor for Dominion, also working for the county, and Tina was not briefed on that. We had Amanda, what's Amanda's last name? It's going to come to me, and it is important for her last name. Gosh, I say it all the time. I can't believe I just forgot it. It'll come to me in just a minute, but she in particular is the one to me that I would want to know more information about. She was the one who was also advising the county commissioners, sitting in on executive meetings with the county commissioners, working in Tina's office, and also, wow, amazingly contracted with Dominion voting machines, and she never ever revealed that information. All of this has been found by emails that were done by uh, Barbara. Gosh, sorry, it's been a minute since I've had to talk about this stuff. Anyway, a citizen actually cored those emails and got that information, and of course, along with Sheila Reiner, who had been the previous clerk and recorder, who definitely had it out for Tina, led the recall effort against Tina as soon as she was elected, and actually is a closet Democrat, but pretends to be a Republican. She's been a thorn in the side of Republicans in that area forever. She's now the treasurer, and she double dips in everything. She has a consulting firm. She makes money hand over fist. She stepped in Garfield County during elections also to advise. It's just fascinating, and also worked for Dominion voting machines. So we have these people that we didn't know about until literally as Tina's being sentenced at, or at the, I think it was right after the trial was ending, and didn't know that there was these huge conflicts of interest. And the commissioner's response was, well, it may not be ethical, but it's not against the law. And I'm like, you have a woman that is going to spend the rest of her years in prison, and that in my mind goes beyond unethical. I do think that if they wanted to, as they did to Tina Peters, they would find the crime with those three that withheld a really critical, important information, and especially Amanda, who was meeting with the commissioners, advising the commissioners regarding Dominion, and then also working for Tina and never disclosing that she was working for Dominion.
Yeah, my suspicion for why, uh, especially in Rubenstein's report, uh, that he focused on Sandra, because I thought about this a lot. Is that anybody who I recommend anybody who's interested, if you consider yourself a Mesa County completist, you have got to read Rubenstein's report, DA Rubenstein's report, and I and Dr. Dougherty's rebuttal to it. They created a story based on still frames from the video surveillance of the office, of which, by the way, several minutes was missing in the April election.
Uh,
But anyway,
oh, oh yeah. He created a new term for that, didn't he? What was his new term that
oh,
he,
he's
he
created
created?
time drift for the reason
Time
that the
drift.
times didn't match some of the things too. Time drift, yeah,
A
that's.
time drift.
But
Okay.
what I think that integral, the only way that his story now they if you look at these pictures, they show monitors in from looking at them 25 feet away, and the person could have been playing Minesweeper, okay, for all of it. But no, they know exactly what was going on that computer right then. Would have been funny if it wasn't so terrible.
Yeah.
But I
It's
believe that the reason they had to point at Sandra is because for their story to work, I think she was the only one that was actually sitting at a computer every one of those pictures. As everybody moves in and out and does different things, I think they basically had to concoct that because otherwise they didn't have a suspect.
it's just, it's horrifying though. I mean, she had such an amazing story of her own personal story of overcoming
Yep, yep, it
incredible
does.
odds, working into this trusted position. I agree with you. I don't think I don't believe it for 1 second. That she did anything criminal. And I think that she was badgered into it. I think she was lied to. I've seen Dan Rubenstein at work. I know firsthand how he deals with people. And I think he scared them. Then he tried to do it to us too. I mean, if people don't, um, I don't know. I mean, she had children, she had kids she had to worry about. The FBI raided their home, had her 16-year-old daughter standing out on the front step in her underwear. I mean, just complete disregard for just basic humanity. and just basic decency with her children, and she knew it was going to get a lot worse. So I'm with you there. And our time has already come to an end. I want to do this again, and I want to go back to report 3, and just I think we're going to expand this. I think we're going to need to do probably a whole morning session, Lauber, and just really start covering this, especially as we prepare for Mike Lindell's trial on the 2nd, and as the U.S. attorneys continue to work to get Clerk Peters out of prison, because it's not enough, though. This has to be rectified. Somebody was stealing elections in Mesa County. Somebody was getting information they never should have had in order to create results that do not exist, that did not happen organically in Mesa County in Grand Junction's municipal election of 2021. And the ramifications in Grand Junction, by the way, are horrendous. What happened under that city council? We can talk about that next time. What has been the policies that played out? The Democrat policies that are just absolutely making Grand Junction just vile. That's going to be worth talking about too. Jeff O'Donnell, I know people are going to want to read these reports and I want everybody to go and just re-inform yourself again. Even though you think you might know everything, there's been updates to this critical report, as Jeff was talking about, and we didn't even get to Aurora today. So we're going to bring Jeff back again, as long as it works for his schedule this week. We're going to get into this again with more breaking information that's coming out of Colorado. Also, I mean, these people are just horrendous. We'll get in that though. Jeff, where can people go to find you, all of these reports, and refamiliarize themselves with this case?
Yeah, I've put all the reports out on a site called mesamadness.com, MESAMADNESS, mesamadness.com. All of the Mesa County reports are there, as well as it's important to remember that Mesa County was the Rosetta Stone that is enabling myself and many other people to find how they did it nationally. It could not be overstated how important what the fruits of what Tina did have been to this country.
Thank you so much, Jeff O'Donnell, the Lone Raccoon. Thank you for being with us. You can find him on Twitter also. He has an excellent Twitter account. Go check it out. These are the real experts, guys. I want to thank you all for being with us today on America's Mom, and we're not out of the clear at all. I hope people understand that. Like we're not done. We're not done. You got President Trump in. Now the real work begins of correcting all of the disgusting, damaging things that both, quote, Republicans and Democrats have been doing. These uniparty people, these globalists in nature who have been craving power, what they've been doing to our election system for the last 40 years. And you guys, if we don't get this right, President Trump's 4 years of taking it to these globalists will be a blip in our story. We can't afford that. We need all hands on deck right now. Please go to lindellplan.com today. Go check out what we're doing there. Take a look at the Lone Raccoon site on X. And of course, familiarize yourself again with these reports. We have to be mobilized, but we also need to be educated. Thank you guys for being with us today on America's Mom. Remember, all that's necessary for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do absolutely nothing. See you back here Wednesday.